Once and for all, we're going to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment in Washington, a failed administration. We're not going to take it anymore.
We're not gonna take it. Never did and never will. It's the First Lady's song, the Ode to the First Lady, just for not a Dr. Jill Biden. It does sound a lot like the theme from the TV show F Troop. As anybody will tell you. Happy Inauguration Day, America. Happy Inauguration Day, world. You're welcome. How many times are we going to have to save you all? When are you going to wake up and start acting more like us? Not like the Democrats, of course. A lot of beep-hole countries are already behaving a lot like the Democrats, so you don't have to. A lot of places, where all power comes from the barrel of a gun. As members of the Obama administration longingly lamented, oh, we need more barrel of the gun power. Happy Inauguration Day. So many things happening in Washington, D.C., an extraordinary time. It is, I should not overlook the fact, it's also a federal holiday. It is Martin Luther King Day. It's Martin Luther King. That means it's federal holiday, so not a lot of traffic in Washington, D.C., because the federal government is off. And in one of President Trump's executive orders that they have announced he will be signing today, federal government employees will be required to return to work. None of this staying home for years and years on end, collecting the paycheck. Since everything's going so well with our government, running so smoothly every place you look. But it is Martin Luther King Day as well in the United States of America. And I always like to point out that Martin Luther King was spied on and abused by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. They spied on him real good, catching with women and all kinds of stuff like that. And then Martin Luther King, of course, you may have heard the song by U2. Martin Luther King, that's how half of the Democrat youth learned about Martin Luther King's assassination. Martin Luther King shot and killed, of course, and he was shot and killed by James Earl Ray, who was a Democrat Party campaign volunteer. He was a Democrat presidential campaign, not like a city council seat or something. He was a campaign operative in California for the Governor George Wallace campaign because he liked racism, and he shot and killed the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and murdered him. Remarkable things. And that Democrat, now you got a communist. That it is 1968, of course, when Martin Luther King was shot and killed by a Democrat Party operative, a Democrat Party volunteer, Democrat Party activist, right? And Bobby Kennedy had been, he then shot and killed in 1968, later after Martin Luther King, by a guy that loved the so-called Palestinian cause and didn't like Israel. And now the Democrats are all in with that on college campuses and across the country. From the river to the sea, the Democrat Party chants. That's what Sirhan chants every morning when he wakes up in a prison in California, even though the Democrats granted him parole more than a year ago, I think now. But Gavin Newsom hasn't signed the paper to let him out, even though the parole board said, oh, yeah, let him go. Sirhan, sure. And John Hinckley's on the loose. He's selling T-shirts to Democrats, John Hinckley is, because the Democrats, you know how they are. Pretty remarkable stuff. But I digress. I did want to point out, because it's true that, that the man that assassinated, and it's not part of anybody's telling of the story except mine, because a lot of people don't care about the truth and about, the Democrat Party with their information dominance. They have academics and news media people, the New York Times, they've wiped out any reference to the fact that James Earl Ray was a Democrat Party political volunteer, campaign volunteer, just like James Hodgkinson, who shot Congressman Steve Scalise and wanted to massacre the entire baseball field of Republican elected officials from the House and the Senate on that baseball field. He was a Bernie Sanders volunteer, Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer. Remarkable stuff. Lee Harvey Oswald, a communist. So, obviously a Democrat Party volunteer, too. Isn't he amazing? And I always love to remind people, too, Lee Harvey Oswald's widow is still alive and well and living in the United States, and Lee Harvey Oswald's children are still alive and well and living in the United States. That'd be an interesting cross to bear, wouldn't it? Yeah. Oh, tell me about your family. I'd really rather not. Remarkable things. So we've got a lot going on here, and Inauguration Day in the United States of America. President Trump takes over. Joe Biden leaves. These blanket pardons for every criminal Democrat in the country. Okay, not quite, but practically. Every member of the January 6th committee gets a complete and full pardon for what? All of the staffers on the January 6th committee all get a complete and full pardon. For what? Well, for any and all crimes committed by them. Over what period of time, Michael? Well, that's not clear, but certainly from the beginning of the January 6th hearings where they suborned perjury, where they may have committed a whole series of felonies, and the Democrats applaud the felonies because they're lynching their political enemies. That's what they do. They're the left. Remember the Roger Stone pre-dawn raid? Remember Peter Navarro being arrested and shackled and his legs shackled at Reagan Airport in Washington? Remember Steve Bannon being thrown in jail? George Papadopoulos, a Naval Academy graduate. The Democrat Party has gone after their political enemies for years and abused the Department of Justice and the FBI and the courts to assail their political enemies. And now they're very, very angry, and they're going to pardon everybody. I still, Joe Biden has only like an hour and 45 minutes to pardon his brother James. Otherwise, I don't know, you'd have to go right after his brother James and get him to tell the whole story under oath. Because they lie under oath all the time up on Capitol Hill. The Democrats do, like General James Clapper lying under oath repeatedly about spying on all of us and all that good stuff. You may remember President Trump, when he was leaving office the first time around, there were news stories about President Trump issuing pardons, and Democrats became irate, like Chuck Schumer became irate about the idea that President Trump would issue pardons before leaving office.
The president's reportedly asking his staff whether he can issue preemptive pardons for himself, his family members, Rudy Giuliani. There's a simple answer: no. No, Mr. President, that would be a gross abuse of the presidential pardon authority.
That's right. It would be a gross abuse of the presidential pardon authority. And now the Lizard King, covered with scales, with his tongue hanging out of the side of his mouth, lurking on a rock, waiting to pounce on civilization. Now he thinks that these blanket pardons for who knows how many people he doesn't even know is just the greatest thing ever, because were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. And he's not a liberal. He's a leftist. He might as well be a Communist Party member in China. December 2nd of 2020, Senator Schumer says president pardoning children would be abuse of pardon authority. Sure. Man, oh man, I'm telling you. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer warns President Trump that reports of him considering pardoning his 3 eldest children would be a gross abuse of the presidential pardon authority. He also says the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, this is the Democrat Party is just so slimy and so sleazy and so dishonest, should stand up to the president over his threat. I got to tell you, these people, were it not for double standards, they would have no standards at all. They couldn't be bigger hypocrites if they set out to be bigger hypocrites. Utterly shameful. Now, why would he pardon his children? Because the left-wing lynch mob was out to charge them with trumped-up crimes. That's why. But now Joe Biden pardoning the whole country if you're a registered Democrat, apparently. Again, it's going to be like the purge. Extraordinary times we're in. All right, now we've got a lot to get at. Let's get we have some so many darn things. I'm telling you. You got penitentiary face Brennan. President Trump says he's going to take away the security clearances for John Brennan, who was Barack Obama's CIA director and a man who voted for the Communist Party candidate for the presidency of the United States, Gus Hall. John Brennan, a.k.a. penitentiary face. And, you know, there are just amazing stuff. They were out there lying to us all about the New York Post reporting on Hunter Biden's laptop. John Brennan, penitentiary face Brennan. President Trump is going to strip him of his security clearance so that he can't get a $1 million job with Raytheon and the other arms contractors, military-industrial complex, Joe Biden, John Brennan, war in Europe, war in the Middle East. They love war. They get rich off of war. They're the profiteers of war. Penitentiary face Brennan is going to have his security clearance stripped by President Trump along with the 50 other criminals that perpetrated a crime against humanity in tampering with the presidential election of the United States. We pay the CIA to tamper in the presidential elections of B-poll countries around the world. Now that the Democrats are turning us into a B-poll country, they've got our own intelligence community tampering in our own presidential election. How third world does it get? The Philippines has never seen anything that corrupt. Here's John Brennan, who's going to have his security clearance stripped. Has he been pardoned yet? I don't think so. Penitentiary face.
I think there are a lot of issues related to this New York Post story that reportedly referenced Hunter Biden emails.
Reportedly.
And as I and several of my former colleagues have pointed out publicly, that it does bear the hallmarks of Russian disinformation.
The letter said earmarks that they published. It does not have any of the. I covered the intelligence community for a decade, for 10 years with my office in the Pentagon. I studied disinformation and Russian-style disinformation. John Brennan is the Russian and the communists spreading disinformation against the American people in an information operation that corrupted the presidential election of 2020 when Joe Biden got a record number of votes in the history of the country without ever leaving his basement and his iron lung. Isn't that amazing? I think they should pardon James Clapper, General and Director of National Intelligence, for lying to the American people about spying on all of us and collecting all of our metadata.
To me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work. All of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow without emails on it without any metadata.
Without any metadata.
It's all very curious.
Well, you guys have been stealing all of her metadata for years. Maybe you should just go look at that, giant server in Utah and tell us all about it. James Clapper was lying. John Penitentiary Face Brennan was lying. The FBI had the laptop already for more than 6 months. They knew perfectly well it was all true. We had Tony Bobulinski, one of the CEOs, verifying that it was all true, that the emails were all true. And our own intelligence community was lying to us, including CNN's Dana Bash's now ex-husband, Jeremy Bash, who was just a campaign Democrat who got a phony office job at the CIA. It was totally fake.
This looks like Russian intelligence. This walks like Russian intelligence.
He wouldn't know
this
it.
This sounds like Russian intelligence.
Liar.
Every intelligence professional I've been talking to, Mika, says this is a Russian intelligence disinformation campaign.
It was a disinformation campaign. That's projection again, being just amazing stuff, just amazing. Adam Schiff lied to the American people every day for years.
The origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help in trying to amplify it.
They're all pathological liars, just amazing. Well, I got to say that the Joe Biden in the debate, you may remember, he lied about it, too.
50 former national intelligence folks.
51.
Who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
Ah, yes. And now we know what the truth was. And what Joe Biden said was a bunch of garbage. What Adam Schiff said was a bunch of garbage. What Jeremy Bash and James Clapper, and especially what Penitentiary Face said, to call it garbage would be a little too polite for my liking. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. I've got President Trump audio for you from last night at the big rally that not everybody could get into. But right now, let's go to Teresa, calling from Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Teresa, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I agree with Diane 100%. I also think they should look into challenging these pardons at the Supreme Court, because how do you pardon someone that's never been charged with anything? And they can still be charged in civil court, and I think the states can charge as well. But there needs to be accountability. They should not get away with this.
Well, the news media are calling it revenge, Teresa. They say, Trump wants revenge. I don't want revenge. I would like accountability, though. So the Democrats, with their information dominance, Teresa, they're going to take the word accountability and they're going to twist it and torture it into revenge. And it's unjust. It's not equity, right? Because the manipulation
anyone with
of
the brain knows not to listen to the Democrats. They're going to twist things around anyway. So we need to do what we need to do, and they need to be held accountable.
And they need to be held accountable. And who do you think in particular ought to be held accountable?
Oh, my gosh. The list is too long. But I'm starting with Fauci for my own personal reasons.
Well, that's
Fauci
fair enough.
Needs to be held accountable.
Yeah, okay. The Republicans should still have hearings on Capitol Hill and expose in theory, the truth. We got a news media that is the most corrupt institution in America, and they will corrupt whatever it is that happens on Capitol Hill for political purposes on behalf of the Democrat Party, and that's a true tragedy. I want to see the 51.
From what I hear,
you go ahead.
Yes, I want to see that. I was going to say, from what I hear, the states can, even though he got a federal pardon, all these people, the states can still charge for crimes, and I believe civilly people can charge for crimes. So the 51, all of them, everybody he's pardoned pretty much.
Yeah.
Can be looked into.
I want these 51, and I don't even know if he's named the fifth. Has he pardoned the? Oh, yeah. No. President Trump's going to strip them of their security clearances so their fancy jobs go away. Inauguration Day in America, Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C. The world changes today because of who we are and what we are. We're the United States of America, and nobody else is. The Democrat Party is doing everything they can to undo the United States of America. But let's go to, for those who were at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and those who watched it on the television. I was kind of busy all day. I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of television yesterday. Visitors in from out of town for the inauguration. The inauguration, as we have traditionally and customarily known it, blown up, so to speak, moving the swearing in inside to the Capitol Rotunda under the big dome, surrounded by statues. But all the statues of the racist Democrats have been removed because the Taliban under Nancy Pelosi removed all the Democrat racists, all the Democrat racist statues and sculptures and paintings removed under Nancy Pelosi because they're cleansing themselves of their own history, like the Taliban. That's your Democrat Party. But President Trump yesterday, lots going on there. They had the Village People. And it turns out that YMCA song isn't a gay song at all. That's what the YMCA writer of the song said. There's nothing gay about that song. What, the Village People and YMCA? What are you kidding? But it's become fun. I got to tell you, my best girl and I, we were downtown last night for the just blocks from the White House at the Mellon Auditorium on Constitution Avenue between 12th Street and 14th Street. 13th Street doesn't run through there. So it's between 12th and 14th at the Mellon Auditorium. And Chris Ruddy and the great people at Newsmax had a really an incredible event there last night. And then you couldn't get out of there because while we were there, the military and the police shut down the whole area. So no Ubers, no taxi cabs, no nothing. Had to walk for more than a mile to get in the sleet and howling wind. And because I figure that the Democrats running the show figure, they're just Trump supporters. Let's make the walk as long as possible. Even though there's no parade today, so there's no parade route to shut down, and it was all that stuff. But in any event, President Trump was at the Capital One Arena where professional hockey teams, the Capitals, and our professional basketball team, I still like to call them the Bullets. I like the Bullets because it was better than the Wizards, which is kind of some kind of satanic worship thing. I don't know what that's about. After school Satan club. But here's President Trump at the Capital One Arena last night, which was packed to the rafters, of course, and then so many people outside that wanted to get in but couldn't get in. Remarkable stuff going on. I got to say, President Trump, Capital One Arena last night.
As a first step toward restoring transparency and accountability to government, we will also reverse the overclassification of government documents, and in the coming days, we are going to make public remaining records relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and other topics of great public interest. It's all going to be released, Uncle Sam.
Matters of great public interest, and I agree. It's about dang time that these documents that belong to all of us, the taxpayers of the United States of America, were made public and available to all of us. Accountability and transparency. The left doesn't want that. The left is one ongoing cover-up and has been for a great many years. Big government, deep state, permanent bureaucracy, cover-up, ongoing for how long now? Why would you not want the John F. Kennedy assassination files made public? Well, we can't. They're a secret. Can't let them in here. They'll see the big board. Got to see the big board. And the RFK files and the MLK files. Again, Martin Luther King killed by a Democrat Party presidential campaign volunteer because the history of the Democrat Party is a bloodstain on the history of all of humanity. Isn't that amazing? Transparency and accountability. Oh, no. And the overclassification of documents. Absolutely true. President Trump.
And tomorrow, everybody in this very large arena will be very happy with my decision on the J6 hostages.
Hostages, he calls them. The media is very angry.
I think you'll be very, very happy. I would say about 99.9% in this beautiful arena.
I've just got to say equal justice under law. It says it right just above the entrance to the United States Supreme Court, etched in stone. I think it's Indiana limestone, and equal justice under law. I want equal justice under law. And if Enrique Tarrio, who was not even in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, was sentenced to 22 years for his role in a riot that he didn't participate in, then I want to know how many years were given to the violent mobs that attacked the White House, set the Church of the Presidents on fire, where the President Trump was this morning. In fact, we got a crazy Jake Tapper soundbite on that. He's very upset that President Trump is hanging with all these old Democrat Party oligarchs. But let's continue with President Trump from the big hockey arena in Washington, D.C. last night.
Tomorrow at noon, the curtain closes on 4 long years of American decline, and we begin a brand new day of American strength and prosperity, dignity and pride. Bringing it all back.
The golden age, honestly. And with all the corruption we've seen, only if you're paying attention, you get your news from this radio station that you're listening to now and my radio show and from Newsmax and from real truth tellers, then you know about the corruption that we've been witnessing for years now and the number of people targeted for political reasons by the Democrat Party abusing the Justice Department and the Attorney General abusing his position and the FBI and the FBI director and the Peter Strzok's and Lisa Page's, and you can smell the Trump supporters. And really, honestly, it's the Democrats you can smell from a distance. I know I've met Michael Moore, and this is the reality of the world we live in. But honestly, I want when the people that attacked the White House for 3 days and forced the evacuation of President Trump to the underground bunker at the White House with his family, when those people are sentenced to periods in prison and in jail that are similar to those of January 6th, then we will have equal justice under law. And until that time, I say everybody, which is now maybe impossible because of the Democrats and their level of corruption, but until that day, until the Democrat Party rioters are held to the same standard as the January 6th rioters, let's just limit it for now to the violent mob of Democrat criminals attacking the White House in 2020 for 3 days, setting fire to the church, forcing the evacuation of the president, injuring 160 to 180 police officers, and an orchestrated nationwide effort bringing in explosives, M80s, blow your hand off, frozen water bottles by the pallets, throwing them at the police, injuring 160 to 180, and not one of them sentenced to prison or jail, not one of them. That is not equal justice under law, and because you people are abusing this power, it should slap you in the face like a fish. And everybody that was, rounded up by a corrupt FBI and subjected to a corrupt Washington, D.C. jury that would put any Republican in jail forever and let any murderer go, which goes on every day. I say equal justice under law, and that means, and there are people still sitting in D.C.'s jail. They're arrested like the day after and of January 6 years ago. And what are their terrible crimes? Aren't these the same crimes committed at the White House by the Democrats and a mob? And in Seattle and in Portland and in Chicago and in New York and in Atlanta and in Miami and in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and somehow those people don't get long prison sentences like Enrique Tarrio, an African-American, Cuban-American, getting 22 years in prison, and he wasn't even in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. They're a lynch mob. They're putting grandmothers in prison for years for praying outside of abortion clinics, the Democrats, while the Democrats are setting churches on fire all across the country. More than, 300 or 500 Catholic churches had been vandalized by the Democrats after St. George Floyd was laid to rest because of cardiac failure while he was resisting arrest again. Amazing. President Trump at the Capitol Arena last night.
Once and for all, we're going to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment in Washington, a failed administration. We're not going to take it anymore.
We're not going to take it. Never did and never will. President Trump wrapping up the rally last night with, naturally, what else would it be? The Village People.
Thank you, America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Uh-oh. Here come the Village People. Now, they're actually there. They're on stage. This is not a recording. The Village People are there. And this, according to the guy who wrote the song for the Village People, he says this is not a gay song at all. It's just about at the YMCA. But it has become a big Trump campaign song. I got to tell you, all around downtown last night, around the White House, this song was playing everywhere. There were pedicabs out on the streets last night, guys pedaling a three-wheel bicycle, carrying two people in the back. They were all playing YMCA, not just the Village. They were all playing YMCA last night everywhere you looked. President Trump, everybody's dancing up a storm. Democrats are furious with the Village People, too. They're always furious with everybody. So President Trump's rally last night in Washington, D.C., isn't that amazing? The Village People. And today, the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, who coincidentally was also the 45th President of the United States, Joe Biden, amazingly. The 46th President of the United States. How did that happen? Oh, yeah, that's right. Our intelligence community tampered and our news media tampered with our election. And Joe Biden got a record number of votes for any candidate in the history of the United States of America. Isn't that amazing? How did that happen? Just extraordinary. All right, let's see. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Dave, calling from beautiful St. George, Utah. Just dropped. Isn't that amazing? Second time today. Let's go to Dan, calling from Highview, West Virginia. Daniel, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, good morning, Chris.
Hey,
one thing, as you pointed out, you talked a little bit about today is definition of terms, and one thing is defining what pardon is. Like, there's got to be some objective criteria as to what it means to actually give a pardon, because then how the left just kind of shifts these words around to be what they want it to be. So, to me, it reeks of immunity. So these preposterous, ridiculous pardons. There's nothing. What would stop, say, Trump, for example, assembling a team of hitmen and saying, "I'm just going to pardon these guys now for the rest of my term," and they can go out and do whatever they want, and they're already pardoned. So, I mean, it's just like granting immunity, and then so I think it's a dangerous thing to be playing with, to say we're going to pardon people who've never been accused of anything, and then I think just like Brennan, who's having his security clearance stripped, I think any J6 committee member who was pardoned should also have his security clearance stripped as well, because there's an obvious they're implying that they committed a crime and that we're going to pardon them of.
Very interesting. And all the staff members who have received blanket pardons, not even by name, just all you people, if you were a staffer, what does that even mean? What if you're only a staffer for a week? What if you resign your position after 2 days? What if you just joined them the last 2 days? They've all got blanket pardons from Joe Biden, which is very, very third world. Are you an attorney, Daniel?
No, I am not.
Congratulations.
I think about these things. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. I try to live my life free of that stuff, but I do think about it. It's like we get caught so many times on you're called a racist, you're called this, and it's like, well, I'm okay if you call me a racist, but let's first define what that means, and then I may or may not agree with you on that. Right. So
it means Democrat.
Is it a pardon or is it just blanket immunity?
Well, you're absolutely right. And what does a preemptive pardon mean? Does that mean that before anyone is accused of a crime, or can they still go forward and commit more crimes now since it's preemptive? What's the start date? Because with his son Hunter, it covers a 10 or 11 year window, more than 10 years of Hunter Biden's behavior, completely immunized with a preemptive pardon. Isn't it amazing to be corrupt and to be so casual about it, and to be corrupt like Jake Tapper and CNN and NBC fake news and the Washington Post? Got a lot of amazing stuff happening today. Stay right there. All right, I see a really fun one on the line here. I see a great one. Let's go back to the telephones. Let's go to Kurt, calling from Chantilly, Virginia. Kurt, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Happy Inauguration Day, Chris. Pleasure to talk to you again.
Welcome, welcome.
So here's my thought. If Biden was deemed incompetent enough to stand trial for his documents he was not supposed to have, wouldn't that be a premise that he was not competent enough for the papers that he signed for the pardons and the executive orders of it late?
I think you are 100% right. I saw it up on the big board, and Jane put your idea, your thought up on the big board, and I said, I got to go talk to Kurt because that is wonderful. Robert Hur, you're talking about the Robert Hur report, who was investigating Joe Biden, right, and said that he's just an old man. What was the exact turn of phrase that he used? That an elderly man with a poor memory. Robert Hur, in May of 2024, when the Hur report came out and the entire left-wing news media, which is practically all of them, they all clapped and they said, oh, Robert Hur said we can't prosecute Joe Biden for as many crimes because the jury would see him as an elderly man with a poor memory. And now the elderly man with a poor memory that was forgiven for crimes that he may have committed, he wasn't tried and convicted of these crimes, but he was forgiven preemptively. The Democrats love preemptive pardons, I guess. But I got to say, Kurt, your idea is a brilliant one because Robert Hur said in his report that Biden sure mishandled classified documents, but he declined to prosecute because, I knew it was going to be unpleasant, but, I got to tell you, the level of vitriol and all this. And then he said he's just an old man with a failing memory and no jury would convict him. So is that a guy that could be trusted to enter into contracts and to make presidential declarations?